Hey there, listeners, creatures, and friends. Your GM Freeman here. Well, this is it. Who knew we'd find our way to the very end? Well, I was pretty sure we would, but I am no less glad that we managed to pull it off. I don't have a lot to say other than thank you. Thank you for sticking around. Thank you for your feedback and all the times you caught our mistakes in very timely manners. Thanks for bumping our little Reddit posts, laughing at our silly little jokes. Thanks for growing attached to our characters and making very well known your anger and sadness when we lost them. Thanks to the patrons for supporting us to help us keep the lights on. Your generosity alone is the reason we were able to persevere. Just thanks for being our friends and our fans and our collaborators. I hope you enjoy the epilogue to Stemming the Tide, where I'm pretty sure we touched on every story resolution available to us, and we all put in a piece of our own creativity. We'll be releasing some behind-the-scenes discussion in the coming weeks as well, but for now, just listen carefully to our formal goodbye. A goodbye to our version of the Abomination Vault story. A goodbye to Stemming the Tide. Oh, and one more thing. Don't forget to listen to the very end. Welcome, my dear friends, to our bittersweet symphony. Stemming the Tide. Yeah, James is shaking his head at me already.
You can do better than that garbage reference.
No way, man. I love me some trite bullshit. Stemming the Tide is coming to the end. And we are here to display to you some story resolutions.
Wait, Freeman. Spoiler alert. If this is the first episode you've tuned into, 1, we stem the tide.
The
2,
one literally called Epilogue.
Go way, way back. You're going to want to start at least in the first 100, if not the first 50.
86 is a good starter episode.
86 is a great starter app.
Because believe you me, this episode, as a first-time listener, will not have nearly the bittersweet effect it should if you have absolutely no experience of what happened so far.
Yeah, we want you to cry, bitch.
Yeah,
and laugh.
We want you to weep and laugh through 160 episodes and then be here for this. So I got to thinking, of course, spending a load of time trying to write and prepare various story resolutions for so many moving parts of this adventure. It got me thinking, what's bittersweet? What else is bittersweet in life? And what we've gone through. And I don't mean the delicious cocktail Negroni, which is arguably the greatest classic cocktail of all time. It's wonderfully bitter and sweet.
Yeah, good point.
Thank you.
Never had one.
Never had a Negroni?
Nope.
Stop the recording.
God. Okay. Epilogue.
I really like Keystone.
We're flying to Texas.
Imagine the opposite of
What
that.
is wrong
Just
with
natty lights.
Oh,
eh?
Natty Light. Oh, okay. I didn't know we were drinking fancy over here. My bad.
No, so I was wondering what sort of bittersweet things that you like to fondly reflect upon. Maybe it's something you loved, another project you loved and completed, or something else. Who wants to go first?
I guess I got something that's kind of bittersweet. So my papa, my mom's dad, was the man that kind of taught me the most things, I think, in my life, from how to use power tools, how to, treat other people, things like that. And he used to always say, "Are we having fun yet?" And I know that everyone here has heard Nickelback, but one of their first most popular songs was How You Remind Me. And one of the lines is, "Are you having fun yet?" And that's also the first song I ever had my first kiss to. And so there's just a lot of "Are you having fun yet?" There's a lot of really sweet, but also, sad moments attached to that just, yeah.
Yeah. That's good.
It's
That's
weird that, yeah.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Scoot?
Oh boy.
Seems like your life is a little too sweet for any bitterness, but prove me wrong.
No. I can see the sadness there.
All the time. I just don't know what's been sweet. It's all just so bitter. I don't know. Like, I was watching the new Tom Hardy series Mobland, and I just watched the season finale of that the other night. That was bittersweet. If you're looking for something more deep than that, I can't think of anything right now, man. I'm all in on this episode.
I feel like anybody that wants to go to Orlando for fun has some trauma behind them. Okay, like you don't
So
want to do
much.
that if you're okay.
Yeah, okay. How about this? Okay, here's something bittersweet for you. The last warm day you can wear shorts in September in the Pacific Northwest, you know? Summer's coming to an end. It's starting to get dark. And you're just like, fuck.
It's impossible for James to relate to this one, but I feel it so hard. I feel it so hard.
Just that last
Especially as a
session drinking at
cyclist,
the beach, you know?
Always cycling, and like the day I can't wear shorts anymore, shorts and a t-shirt when cycling is very bittersweet.
Okay, there you go. Tom Hardy and the end of summer. And not being able to watch 500 Days of Summer for the first time again.
Aww.
Okay.
That's actually pretty good.
Duncan?
Oh, well, little peek behind the kimono for the listeners. You had told us that we were going to do some bittersweet things for this, and I was going to go Bittersweet Symphony right away. So I'm glad we had to laugh about it, but you stole my fucking trait reference. And...
You could just say it and then James will get pissed twice.
You know what's bittersweet about that song is that for a very, 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 very long time, they did not make any money because of the sample that they used. So 95 or 99% of all the royalties went to the person who made the sample. But that was eventually turned around, or rather the original artist made the decision, if I recall correctly, to say, yeah, you know what, from this point on, they can have their cut. Because
after they made $7 trillion.
Yeah,
well, it hit the point where it's like it's not really our song anymore, and it's such a small thing from our own past. And I forget the story behind it, but it was, as far as I know, like, you know, the original artist like really had nothing, not much involvement in like the, you know, the rights and where the royalties were supposed to go, because it ended up being caught up in record deal shit and record executive shit. But it ended up going back into the Verb's favor, at least at some point.
Well, bitter or
Just
sweet
bittersweet.
garbage all just smells like garbage. So,
Damn,
on a more
dog.
serious note,
Damn, dog.
to call back to a previous intro banter when we were talking about hobbies, and I was alluding to the guitar that is no longer over the corner of my shoulder, because I did take it out of its case and replaced the tuning pegs on it last week. And it was a very bittersweet moment because it belonged to my now deceased grandfather who passed away during COVID. And it kind of like led me to reflecting upon, you know, the years and what has brought us to this moment that has brought me to this moment. I mean, this has been a pretty big year. As we record, we are, about exactly a year from when I landed here in BC. So it's been a good kind of moment to, you know, really recognize how much distance there is between the past and now, but kind of, you know, appreciate the journey that's brought me here.
I feel that. That's great.
Aww.
And we've been able to keep you, or this podcast, I should say, together through all of that, which is awesome. Yeah. James? Bitter? Sweet?
I don't know, man.
Preference?
I genuinely don't know. I don't know if it's the autism or the way my brain works, but I'm pretty easy for me to separate the bitter and the sweet and only focus on whichever one I'm interested in. So I don't know. I mean, your last day of shorts had me thinking that I really don't enjoy the last day of the season where I can wear gloves. Like, it really bothers me that I have to stop wearing gloves. But that's not bittersweet because I'm not looking forward to summer. I just lament not being able to wear gloves anymore. So I genuinely don't have anything for you. Yeah. And the Verve just sucks. So I try to never think about that phrase. That song is awful. They're an awful band. I don't get it. So pass, I guess. Hard pass.
Hard pass. That's fine. It's fine. I mean, if there is, you don't have to have some grand example. If there is an example for all of us, it's right now. It's this. Surely, you know, mission accomplished.
Not really.
But we have
James
to
just
leave
like,
it
nah,
behind.
dog. Do you not just listen to what I just
We're gonna
said?
leave it behind.
Yeah, I mean, we're about to move on to the next thing. I am vibrating with excitement.
Oh,
Yeah.
There's
I'm-
nothing
I am-
sad here. There's
I'm not
Of course.
sorry
there's
either. I am-
pride and
Of course, there's
there's
that's
so
the
many
sweet
other
part.
wonderful
There's
emotions.
something so exciting, but it's hard. It's also hard to say goodbye. At the same time.
No, not for me. I'm good. I loved every minute of this, but it's not hard for me.
But see you never. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is bittersweet. It may not be as far as flavors go, but I've decided that we will start today's epilogue with me cracking a beer that I would normally never buy because
Natty Light.
it is. I mean, I my God.
Get him.
My God, no.
It's a lager.
No. There's a difference between normally would never buy and absolutely would never buy. Okay.
I like the idea that Natty Light is your celebration drink.
Oh, we're fancy.
I genuinely don't even know what Natty Light is.
It's the Prosecco of beers. Well, High Life is already the champagne, right? So
Oh, High Life
yeah,
is-
yeah, you're absolutely right.
Oh my God. There's a local
Oh,
brewery
God.
here that
Nailed that.
tried to recreate Miller High Life and they got a cease and desist. So they just renamed it Low Life and it sounds like crazy. It's
I bet
awesome.
I would drink that.
Yeah.
what brewery is it?
Twin Sails.
Okay, so what are you working on?
So I've got I buy from Daggerad quite often. They're Belgian style only brewery here in BC. Make great beer, and they do like limited releases all the time. And this is a barrel aged mixed culture saison, which is exactly the kind of beer that I want. But it's made with matsutake mushrooms, and I hate mushrooms.
Does it
So-
taste like mushroom?
I don't know. I haven't tasted it yet. I've just cracked it open.
Does it
I
get
gotta
you
finish what I
high?
got here.
Is this a Caligny reference?
I hope it gets me high.
Enoki?
Enoki, no.
Enoki in my beer. So I'm gonna finish what I got here, and I'm gonna pour it, and then see and sip on it through this session, assuming I don't hate it tremendously.
Great podcasting.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I'm drinking a Fat Tug.
Ooh, that's the fattest tug I've ever seen.
another Vancouver classic
you're
or another
fat.
BC
No.
classic. Yeah.
Just a casual
There's nothing-
7%er.
There's nothing quite like going up to the bartender and say, "Give me a tug," and then they pour you a beer.
We go to different bars.
Okay. Let me start off with a little intro from Augrail, our dear little recap cataloger chronicler of our tale.
It's a strange life. Unlife. That was chosen for me. Many hands make for short work. But how short can an unending task be? I don't mean to sound as if I am complaining. I am very much not. But once the cataloging of this tale is complete, I do not wish for these many hands to be idle. And so we will catalog more in our secret place below the ruins of the old and fallen Gauntlet. The Caligny and I toil, and we correspond with the very few who know we are still here. Why we record any tale at all, I am unsure, other than to say that I have derived great joy in the recordings of others' exploits and findings. And so I will play the part of those who came before, the noble part, that is. For I have no quarrel with any, nor any sense or need for revenge. My sense of purpose changes now as I put down the epilogue of the Abomination Vaults. And while I have decided my future, I struggle to focus on the resolutions that need settling. In what tone should I present them? Should they follow the structure I have presented thus far? And where does consistency need maintaining? And when does it need casting aside? I have no answer, but my still unfamiliar instincts tell me that I should do what I can to put forward the end in the many ways those involved would do so themselves. So, prepare yourselves, dear readers of this text, for the end of a familiar tale in an unfamiliar composition, and what I hope to be a wholly satisfactory series of narrative tones.
Duncan, you have the floor.
Emerging from the depths of the abomination vaults, Nirkaj takes a breath of dank fog-fen air, as if it's the first breath he's taken since plunging into this fight. It's the freshest air he's ever tasted. Whether real or imagined, his scales seem to shimmer. He feels powerful. It suddenly strikes him how differently he had imagined this moment. He looks down at the dirty scraps of clothing covering his scratched and dented armor, far from the splendid outfit of a firebrand. There was no roaring, fanatical crowd cheering on his every heroic deed. There was only the grateful, yet weary, tired from fighting for their lives, nearly broken people of Otari to pass on the tales they heard secondhand. And this feels right to him. Feels real anyhow. Glory can wait while there's a hard-fought peace to enjoy. Whether real or imagined, Nirkaj feels a tremor beneath his feet. Was there a dragon stirring down there? He takes another breath of sweet surface air and turns towards Otari, wondering if they'll name the thirsty alpaca after him once it reopens.
And as Nirkaj has this moment, breaching the surface of the Darklands and the vaults below, we'll turn to James for a little more that's happening at the same time.
The wooden door separating Ruff from the swarming Erdefon erupts into splinters as he readies himself to strike as the first of his foes step through the broken door, blade bared, tongue whirling. Ruff readies his blade and digs in his heels, and he feels a soft touch, and a hand wraps around his on the hilt. "Raphael, your fight is won," he hears an ethereal voice say. A pure and true warmth begins to spread through him as the world before him brightens to a white void. When he opens his eyes, he finds himself facing a golden, ethereal army, standing at attention behind a young-seeming woman. "We are many," she says with no emotion touching her voice. "And you, young Shuni, have played your part well. Very well." Every spirit standing before him moves in unison and gestures to another among their ranks. That spirit steps forward and reaches out to Ruff, and he hears the same ethereal voice come from its mouth. "Join us. It's my time now."
And within the vaults, few things are left to stir. What was once the servants' quarters has seen little since the ousting of the Morlocks, the ousting of Memnivix the Web Lurker, and the saving of the members of the Osprey Club. The library, quite contrastly, is busier than ever, with its new populace and its newfound task of cataloging its contents and recording of new tales. Belcora's old personal retreat is among the most stagnant of the levels. Jal Mesmin no longer occupying the pavilion, of course, Volek's presence in Belcora's study, and the Void Glutton's squatting in her personal quarters, both a thing of long past. And Otari's ghost put to a final rest. The arena and the flesh-warping laboratories saw all their ancient undead and twisted aberrations, along with the equipment to create them and the would-be and willing test subjects, all destroyed. Even the crazed Velstrak, known as Kratonus, which was never really revealed, I don't think, was lost among the destructive shakes as the gauntlet fell. Nary an ooze has been left to feed off the grime and goo left behind by the heroes of Otari. The prison run by the devils under Eurevian's control remains without its diabolical stewards, of course, and the stasis chamber prison long since failed, leaving little more than a gruesome battlefield where monster and beast frenzied and slaughtered each other, one and all, when the gauntlet collapsed. The farm and hunting grounds, of course, found their own new equilibrium after a time and fashion. Wild by nature, for a long time, the subterranean lakes and fungal forests barely remember the shaking of the vaults. The Urdefon remember even less, since every single one fell at the hands of the drow and the temporarily frenzied wildlife. The drow saw great losses, even with their reinforcements and the absence of their enemy's war chief, and Ildaris still remained standing and in full operation. However, as things go, it may not be for long without an opposing force to keep an eye on in this area. And as for the temple to Nimbeloth herself, its entrances buried along collapsed structures and the rubble, but the gauntlet, however, still stands together through the pristine magics that created it. It is, in fact, indestructible. But wholly buried directly atop its power source, it rests in an all but useless place. Perhaps one might just have to hope that a purple worm does not happen to one day tunnel directly to it, creating more access. The battlegrounds that the many heroes of Otari fought upon are now peaceful, laid to rest, no longer a looming, uncaring threat. Further below, however, many things stir in the Darklands, but only one among the multitude is important to us here and now. The sighting of a young deep gnome at the Drow Urdefon battle that I had mentioned in the final episode goes just a little bit further. As this young creature delved back down and further into his homelands, you might remember that you never fully explored the camp of the Urdefon. And having been sent with provisions by the Ildaris Drow after that battle, this young deep gnome arrives home, healthy and hale, if a bit scraped from the journey. And his welcome home is indeed one of great warmth, for his journey toward the surface was not of curiosity or adventure, but of rescue for his long-lost grandfather, Glashramdur. And while he may have never found himself the rescuer he set out to be, the young deep gnome cares not at this because of the sight of Glash bouncing his many, many grandchildren upon his knee, regaling the tales of his own capture, rescue, and contribution to the great heroes of Otari. Deep within the Darklands, a family is reunited, and they know not of what occurs above or the full scope of efforts that they owe their lives and happiness to, but they sure do appreciate it. And with that, we go to the surface, to the ruins of the Gauntlet Keep, the Fog Fen, and the vast forests surrounding it. And I pass the mic to Cam.
Oh, well, no, thank you, Frank. In the forest, we see Talford walking down a shady forest trail, the trademark lit cigarette hanging from a loose lip as he brushes the hair back out of his eyes, while Beryl follows a few steps behind, quietly fussing over a nookie in her arms.
You're still following me,
he says to the empty forest around him. Beryl looks up confused. Good Sparrow steps out from behind a tree.
The past follows everyone, Telford.
You are not a metaphysical concept, he snarks. Nothing but silence answers him, though.
What do I need to do to get this particular past to quit following me around?
His hand begins to grip around an imaginary handle before relaxing at Beryl's touch to his arm. We flash back to Talford and Beryl talking in the Gauntlet as the rest of the party went ahead to Otari. We see Talford sitting with his back to a curved wall, cigarette burning, smoke curling into his eyes as he reads from one of the tomes. Why does everyone treat you like a pariah? Talford doesn't even look up before replying, I like it that way. You seem lonely to me. Talford takes a drag. You remind me of someone. A pleasant someone? Used to be, as he exhales a plume of smoke. They sit in silence for an hour before Talford finally looks back up from his tome and sees Beryl still there, quietly fussing over Inoki. You're still here. Should I be somewhere else? No, I just... And his voice trails off, and Beryl just smiles before going back to fiddling with Inoki. And we come back to Talford, staring into empty space, a tendril of psychic energy leaking, connecting him to the Good Sparrow.
And Good Sparrow simply says, thanks for that. Now I'll always know where you are. But it's not me who will find you, Rawline. I'm not that part of your past.
Well, there's no use crying over spilled blood.
One final time.
Had to get it in.
I love it. As we pull away from the forest and into the outskirts of Otari, we find ourselves near the Stone Ring Pond, and amidst the many roles of the druids there, Warlewin's arrival in Otari was motivated by something quite specific. A 30-year-long mission to restore trust after the betrayal of Jal Mesmin, the werewolf druid who hid his affliction and brought terror and grief to the citizens of Otari. His final moments in assault upon the town saw the death of several town guards and the Crow's Cask's proprietor and alchemist, Magilloy, all of whom were buried with honor among their kin and townsfolk in the very graveyard that 3 major battles were held in little over a month. Forgiveness and the journey forward can be a fickle thing. But it would, of course, be untoward of the druids here to not perform their funereal rites for a fellow druid. It may not be a grand sense of honor like those who fell for a cause held in belief by a great many people, but at least it is through a sense of duty, and Jal's body planted to the earth will do its part in the balance of nature. Moving along the edge of town, you can see that Clort is back to work after his reinvigorating return to battle. This time he is exasperated by the fact that Rab Turtle has halted production over some financial dispute, and Alamora Enkelholtz is ready to wring his neck because she's got a gaggle of children she's supposed to be teaching instead of babysitting Rab's bullshit. Manhimez is approaching this scene, all business in his step and expression, and life is back to normal indeed, where the petty rich squabble, the matronly are quick to intervene and protect, and the leaders stumble their way forward for the good of their community. And the layman toils while he dreams of better times, both past and future. And leaving a little further out of town, Ynyasmara can be seen on the outskirts, flanked by a retinue of loyal members of the Osprey Club. Members of the town of Otari, wholly and completely, they still like to do things their own way. After all, Otari is a diverse town despite its size. Not everything needs to be the same or part of an achingly boring status quo. 3 bodies are dragged from a cart and to the side of a hillock pocked with ancient stone slabs. One is an unfamiliar face to us, but a sore and annoyed look crosses Ynyasmara's face when she looks down at the botched back alley job. Infection killed this person. Not very becoming of a death for an Osprey member. Not their kind of poison. She shakes her head in disappointment before looking over the other more familiar corpses, and then she stands with pride and speaks. I, Ynyasmara Starhand, oversee the endurance of club members. Jiminy Crockett, Shadnunder, and the Bad Bed, aka Leroy Brown. May the shadows protect them with the vigor and loyalty of a junkyard dog. After a very brief show of honored ritual, she turns to the others and says, "Now get digging, and someone better find me a new and reasonably skilled back alley chirurgeon, quick sharp." That's full of deep cuts, that one. A golf clap, thank you. Thank you, Cam. If we move ourselves away from Otari for the moment, in fact, away from the Isle of Kortos, we will find ourselves in a large throne hall where stands a great many soldiers, in rank and file, fully armed and at attention. Upon the seats in which the troops face do not sit kings or queens, but generals of the vast Andoran army. The High Messenger of Augustana approaches today's occupants of the seat and hands a sealed letter to the herald. The seal is broken, the page unfurled, and read aloud for all to bear witness. Scoot, take it away.
To General Liu of Augustana, care of the Andoran Army, Outpost 6 of the Asphodel Mountains. General, it is with a heavy heart that I write this letter. Your daughter, Lady Gilda of August, has died. I'm sure it is of no consolation, but she died protecting innocence, life, and good. I am not a man of war. I am a simple man of simple means. I'm not used to the death of a friend. Gilda has become a dear friend to me. She is a paragon of all that is good and true. I do not know you, and I probably never will, but I have heard stories of you and the Golden Legion. I saw with my own eyes Gilda, the bastion of good against evil. Wave after wave of undead crashed upon her shield and were sent to the boneyard, like a devastating tide sucked back into the ocean. She wore her eagle pauldrons with such pride. I remember the sparkle in her green eyes the day that they arrived. Even until the end, her gear was well maintained, polished, and cleaned, a testament, I believe, to her strong faith. The evil that we face, I have never seen before. It is pure hatred and destruction. The black heart of a necromancer festering in the deep, proselytizing an outer god. I know not how much longer we will be diving deep into the hellish abomination vaults. Gilda isn't the first loss in our party, and I'm sure she will not be the last. I worry that none of us shall survive this grim task. Perhaps others will take up the mantle in our wake. All I know is Gilda is a part of this story, of the defense of Otari. She will be remembered for as long as this town shall live. I and many others owe her our lives. She passed in our defense, and I will remember her until my last breath. Signed, Gavin Delarice.
The herald refurls the message, hands it to the High Messenger, and they step to the side. General Liu of Augustana stands to face his loyal army, and for a moment it appears he may speak. Instead, he offers only a grand Andoran military salute. And in retaking his standing posture, the faintest of falters can be seen, and the general very uncharacteristically goes to excuse himself from the Great Hall. However, the woman to his side, still sat in her gilded chair, grabs his arm and halts his exit before rising to address the hall. Tonight we mourn, and we mourn but one soldier. And we mourn with all the despair that has been held within us. Tomorrow we celebrate, and we celebrate the courage of all who have fallen for the cause of good. And we celebrate with all the joy that they would bestow upon the world if they were here now. One and all. And with a great unison of voices, strong and bold, weak and faltering, beaming with smiles and stricken with weeping tears, the soldiers respond to the call. One and all. Far from the material plane, far from the Isle of Kortos or the land and nation of Andoran, we find ourselves in a stinky, sulfury, hot, disciplined sort of place.
One might call it hell.
One might call it hell. Cam, you want to take us to hell real quick?
Absolutely. I thought you'd never ask. Lump, the riot maker. The hellbound attorney sneers as he observes the imp finishing its work. You've made quite the reputation for yourself down here. All you had to do was follow orders and be a good soldier, but no. You and your petty resistance. Your small little doses of insurrection throughout the day. You figured out your contract, discovered our clauses. You could have, you should have kept this to yourself. But no, you insisted on telling others. The imp tugs at the stitch, tying Lump's mouths shut as they twist into smiles despite the blood dribbling down to Lump's sulfur eye. You could have simply served out your contract. But now we're busy putting down your little revolts throughout the hells. Do you realize the problems you've caused? Not that it matters. You'll lose, of course.
Despite the circumstances and forced surgical smile that is now upon Lump's face, which is a very... Thank you for that very macabre image, Cam. It's horrifying. Lump actually has something to smile about, which is quite odd, because the hellbound attorney turns to a bound Aranis, one Barkambuck, and says,
Oh, the irony, how even a devil can fall from grace. No longer beholden to your own contract, thanks to the actions of this lump of a creature. You somehow find yourself reined in like you should have done with your mad dog.
Barkambuck spits and says, Never trust Phistopheles.
Which is exactly why you should have thoroughly read the contract Eurivian had drawn up for you and your pet. You are the fool here, Barkambuck. Which is why you are now sentenced to nothing more than an indentured courtly messenger.
Barkambuck's wings then suddenly begin to turn away from their glossy black and into a dusty white, and legal script starts to form all over his skin.
And now you are beholden again to the types of devils that you underestimated in the first place. Enjoy your service.
With a rather strange and unspecific turn of events in Lump's story, I love. We'll bring ourselves back to the home turf. Let's go into the town of Otari. Let's take a look at how things are going. It's a cool early morning with the most typical weather Otari sees. The bustle of workers setting out to their places of work, move through the Otari streets, and Aloria Galentine's messengers dart through alleyway shortcuts. But in the Otari market, things start a little later than the early rise of the fishers and the woodworkers. It knows it needs to wait for the caravans to enter town a little later in the day, and for the local farmers to swing by and speak with Hala High Stepper at the Farmers Guild. It's not your typical market, given it's a tiny hub of a town. But that is not to say all is quiet. No, some stall owners are eager to start their days in the market instead of at home. And one such marketeer is more eager than most. A young Shuni, new to town, and the exciting life of a market hawker, seems to be the earliest to arrive and start the day. An aromatic brew of coffee is made and thoroughly enjoyed with their favorite meat pastry of choice. And while no one is around to see the guilty pleasure, a sweet and fresh fruit-driven bar is followed for a morning dessert. The Shuni proudly pulls the canvas covering the front of their stall, revealing the newly crafted sign that says in big bold letters, "Wolf Helms Wares." Thanks, James. And they sit with beaming pride and patience, thinking about the many conversations they'll have today. They quietly practice their pre-prepared calls to passing potential customers, and anticipating meeting their neighboring vendors and the friendliest of the locals. The Shuni is young, naive, and filled with the sense of possibilities the future may hold, but is also wholly unaware that today is one of 2 days the Otari market does not open. And it will take them a rather embarrassing amount of time to figure that out. Outside of the market, of course, life is back to normal, with Tamerley running the fishery and the games parlor like usual. Lardis Longsaddle sits with Kilino Lathanar. They play dominoes. A trained military mind versus a measured business acumen, both underestimating each other, thinking their opponent has gone soft. Lardis, in his retirement of promoting his son Gerald to captain, nepotism is surely a sign of biased and unobjective minds. But Kilino, having finally ceded to the social pressure and agreeing to close his precious market a second time per year to mark the final victory against Belcora. The day, of course, is set on the anniversary of Tulok's death, though he would never admit it. Such soft leaning toward sentimentality surely doesn't make for a worthy adversary. That's what they both think, of course. And they silently battle each other on the game board and in their minds. Doriana Menhimez is now a junior serving girl at the fishery, her health and youthful energy restored, although the lingering issues with her atrophied hand still linger. Tamerley looks on like a proud and concerned aunt, knowing the young girl will learn valuable lessons under her tutelage, as much as she did under Alamora Inkelholtz. But hoping she will one day move on to bigger and more prosperous things, more akin to her father's work. She's simply a terrible server overall, but not necessarily by any fault of her own. The smithy, Blades for Glades, at some point was taken over by the garrison after Carmen's disappearance, or rather lack of announcement that he survived and then died. And during the town's times of great need, this is when the garrison claimed ownership. And since then, it has not changed. To many, it was sensible for the town of Otari to govern its own widely essential blacksmith, and few argued as Menhimez gave over operations to the town guard, albeit with many rules and provisions that obligated the majority of service to the greater Otari area and the farms along the Granary Road. Crow's casks will have stood sad and abandoned for some time, as a strange contrast to a newly revitalized thirsty alpaca, now called the Hound and Dragon, by very quick last-minute popular vote in our Discord. The stone-scale kobolds who climbed from the depths of the old pub's ruins rebuilt upon its foundations and integrated themselves into everyday Otari life. making their ostracism a thing of Otari's historical museum. Their prosperity led by the adamant, and the one thing a place where everybody knows your name needs. Many exaggerated tales, courtesy of Nirkaj, aka Nick, aka Nick Cage. And the Rowdy Rockfish remains as quiet as ever, doing just the right amount of business it needs to survive, and avoiding the reputation of its namesake thanks to its no-nonsense owner, Brelda Venkervale. As for her son Lasda, he was loath to take up the family business and found himself employed on the outskirts of town in a much more peaceful rod and bow club on the southern shore, just east of Otari. Morlabint and Kevin toil away in their little bookshop. Of course, by toil, it is meant that they live a quiet and pleasant life of peace. Well, Kevin does. Morlabint is not secretly getting into trouble, but he is the local liaison to Augrail and the now secret underground library. And mostly he troubles himself with two things. One, finding grand tales worth recording and cataloging, and two, how he will eventually need to tell Vandy Banderdash that it was decided a second library was appropriate to maintain underground, in secret, to cover and store texts she would never allow in her temple to the Dawnflower. And oh, sweet Kevin is oh so sweeter in his blissful ignorance and his collections of educational tomes. From here, we'll go to the Dawnflower Library, and I'll pass the mic to Scoot. Yet again.
Silence lays over the Dawnflower Library. White sheets lay on rich wooden tables. Draped over those lain down, figures of varying sizes and shapes, but unmoving alike. The air heavy, but clean and fresh. Unsure footsteps approach, echoing down the hall. Life fills the chamber, and the room breathes, shaking off the weight of death. The petite hand of Vandy Banderdash pulls back the burial shroud of Tulak. His eyes are closed, his pale skin unchanged from the respite provided by Vandy's magic. One may think him just sleeping. Aileen rushes to the table, laying a hand on her brother's, whimpering softly. Her parents, Renee and Galt, follow more slowly. Galt's arm squeezes Renee tight, her tears falling from her cheek to dampen his shirt. Older now than before, so many years had passed. No word, no sign, and now this. The last time she saw Gavin, he was an adolescent, sitting in the sun, smiling at a table in the Delarice Inn. The man on the slab in front of her had aged. A man, though part elf, Renee pondered how much he had aged. She could only imagine the pain he had endured over and over, day after day. The torture and magical healing, only to be tortured again. She noticed the creases around his eyes, stress, determination. This she didn't recognize. Gently, she runs her hand along his cheek. She saw peace. It stilled the anger that she had felt at the years of silence and distance. Vandy saw the creases on Renee's forehead.
He died a hero.
Renee nodded, clearing her throat. Tell us how he lived. Vandy told her of the countless hours spent in the library, his thirst for knowledge. She spoke about the interactions he had with the locals, the hope he brought to families by reading his bones. Then she explained his distance. She didn't know at the time why he spent so much time alone, but had come to understand. He separated himself from society to protect himself and others. It was his care that made him seek isolation.
Tulak. Gavin. Never truly understood his powers. But he began to unravel your family history. I think that brought him peace, in some measure. This town owes him a great debt that will never be repaid. His sacrifice is a testament to the strength that you gave him. And as we leave the scene, we see the sparkle of tears upon every face. But the sparkle as well of one thing only that is not a tear, but the silver mask of a sparrow just under the waistcoat of Aileen Delarise.
What?
And now Scott knows who Good Sparrow is. Finally.
Son of a bitch.
If you ever go back and listen to all that episode 100 stuff, you're going to be like, mind blown.
You really buried the lead on me there, Barn. You know I'm too dumb for this.
We will exit town again real quick before coming back to the library. And I will pass it on again to James.
A road-worn wagon, pulled by a single pony, pulls up to the Rod and Bow Club. A weary-looking gnome steps down from the driver's seat, adjusts his old, dusty clothing before reaching back and grabbing a large green, leather-bound book, stuffed with notations sticking out the top, bottom, and sides. He brushes his hand through his tall red hair and sets off for the door of the club. David Ettercap moves his way seamlessly through the club, waving a grim hello to Miroslav, and heads directly to the office of Aelin Weinmar.
Is it finished?
Aelin asks without looking up from the papers on his desk as David closes the door behind him.
Well, if you...
David starts before Aelin cuts him off.
Is it finished?
He asks with more force as he looks up from the paperwork, his dark eyes sunken with exhaustion, piercing deep through David's own shimmering iris and right into his soul. David swallows hard in response. He couldn't recall a time when he had seen Aelin like this, almost desperate, very different from the man he left a few years ago.
It's finished.
David sighed his reply and placed a plain green tome on his desk.
You'll have to understand it's...
He continues as Aelin picks up the book and begins to flip through, clearly not paying any heed to David's caveats.
This is perfect. Thank you, David. We'll send you on your way with your usual fee.
Thank you, but I'd rather this one be my contribution. No fee required. Let's call this a settling of an old debt.
He replied quietly as he studied the top of his boots. Aelin pushed his way out of the chair and slowly stalked around to the front of the desk until he was standing just inches from the gnome. His big arms wrapped David up in a huge hug before whispering to him.
Thank you, David. I know he'd appreciate this.
A few hours later, Vandy Banderdash arrives at the Rod and Bow Club with a smile on her face and a pack on her back. She finds Aelin sitting below a small tree with purple and white buds forming on the young branches. Next to Aelin is a hand-painted wooden sign, clean and free of dust, with a small white hat resting upon it, The hat's brim is filled with old and rusted fish hooks and tattered lures. Aelin stands and smiles warmly to Vandy. They exchange small talk, and at the end of the interaction, Aelin hands her the green book, reluctantly. But she takes it with some reassuring words and her trademark charming smile, and Aelin lets the book go, smiling and waving to her as she leaves. That spring, the white and purple buds on the tree in front of the Rod and Bow Club open to white and yellow flowers, and a few bloom into perfectly shaped, fragrant yellow lemons. And the sign below the tree reads, "In loving memory of Arthur."
Vandy Banderdash, back at the Dawnflower Library, is perusing through the stacks and stacks of books, humming and hawing to herself as she debates where to place the green tome Aelin gave her. Then an idea strikes her, and she smiles to herself and scurries away from the religion section, past the adventure stories shelf, past folklore, and stops with a wide grin in front of a sparsely filled shelf titled History of Otari. And with a tear in her eye, she slides the tome right in between Behind the Veil, A Walk Through the Puddles by David Ettercap, and The Rose Guard by Asefna Menhimes. Its gilded title gleaming between the two, The Life and Times of Arthur, Otari's own herald of Erastil. She walks away with a sense of satisfaction that only appropriately cataloging and organizing her library can bring her. But it is, of course, fleeting when she approaches the front desk to another scene of dawdling and dilly-dallying acolytes. And of course, they are yet again giggling at the nonsensical introduction of pilgrims to her newest employee. Duncan?
The air is still as the doors to the Dawnflower Library crack open, disturbing the morning quiet, and two young, timid followers of Saren race shuffle into the spacious main chamber. Shafts of light through the windows illuminate rows of books in all states of repair, from brand new to nearly burned to ash. It's quiet, but there are already several people inside, poring over books and shuffling through old manuscripts. The pilgrims take a moment to appreciate glints from the dust motes hanging in the air before a large, imposing shadow falls over them. "A rolling stone gathers no moss," comes a booming voice.
I'm sorry, what?
Squeaks out a reply. The gray-skinned orc dressed in robes frowns for a moment, then says serenely, "A wise man once said, 'A rolling stone gathers no moss, for it is worth nary a bush.'" He looks a little bit confused, but there is conviction in his voice.
I see,"
says the pilgrim, looking quizzically to their partner. The orc nods and wanders off towards the rows of books. He walks as if he's just come off a boat.
That's Krucka. It's good to hear him speaking again, though I can't claim to understand most of what he says.
The pilgrims turn to see the cheerful visage of Vandy Banderdash staring back at them.
We weren't sure the effects of the Nevermind spell would ever be reversed. They may indeed never be fully. But that last aphorism was close to making sense. Progress is being made, and between us, he wasn't exactly perfect in his logical conclusions before the spell.
The group looks over to Krucka, who is no longer paying attention to the book in one hand and rubbing his stomach with the other. "A wise man once fed? Hungry." He looks at Vandy. "Hungry."
Yes, Krucka, time for breakfast. Yes, then I'll need you to do some cleaning. This place gets dustier every day. Come on now.
She starts hurrying towards the orc, turning her head to the new arrivals.
Welcome, by the way. I'll be with you shortly, but feel free to look around. Never a dull moment around here.
The two pilgrims shrug, say a quick blessing, and enter the library.
As time rolls by and the everyday of Otari, we pull away from the town a little bit, but staying nearby. We find ourselves somewhere along the coast, the cliffs, to a spot where one can be alone.
At the end of it all, with the last of waves crashed against the shore, dashed against the rocks, Harold leaves town. Following the Rosegard Road, past the Giant's Wheel and continuing to the South Coast Road, he moves silently but slowly towards the cliffs. Finding a nice spot, he comes to a stop, removing a massive bundle of timber from his back. Old beams, rank and damp. Dropping them on the ground, he starts to collect dry kindling and firewood in the afternoon sun. As the sun descends, Harold finishes building the pyre. He kneels on the cliff's edge, taking in the beginning of the sunset, waves crashing below. Focusing on the sun and the sounds of the tide, the world around him fades away, and Harold breathes deep. Skode, I have defeated my most prized prey, a power beyond which I have never seen. In your name, I offer this sacrifice. Rising, he carefully lights a tinder bundle, and the pyre ignites. With a practiced hand, the fire grows quickly and begins to come alive. Harold looks at the timbers set beside the fire, and a shadow crosses his face. Breathing deep, he picks up the first beam and sets it on the fire. Skode, in your name, I burn the foundations of the gauntlet and cleanse my home, the city of Otari, whom I never turn my back upon. He sets another piece of the foul wood upon the flames, now beginning to rise high in the setting sun. The rays of sunlight reflecting off the ocean, painting the sky red. My fallen comrades and the citizens of Otari, may your souls find the boneyard. From the Rosegard to the heroes of Otari, may you now rest in peace. As the sky turns from red to purple, and then to black, Harold continues to feed the fire. The damp wood from the gauntlet bubbling up the putrid lifeblood of the fogfen, emitting an unpleasant odor. Stinging Harold's nostrils, it makes him almost dizzy. As the wood burns down to embers, the smell of the ocean begins to take over Harold's senses. The fire, now a dull glow, crackling gently at his feet. Stars begin to appear in the darkening night sky. Akilda, for you whom I could not protect, I protected the citizens of Otari. In your name, I have cleansed this land of great evil. I know you wait for me on the other side of the horizon, but you must wait a little longer. I live to hunt another day. Keep your spear and your spirit sharp. I shall see you when the sun sets on my soul. Harold lays down in the grass beside the smoldering fire, looking up to the stars. Much like him and Akilda once would, but these stars are different, and so now is he.
And speaking of the stars and the ethereal and the travel of souls to the boneyard, down the river, stalked by many prey, but now safe, at least for now, from the grasp of Nimbaloth. James?
It had been so long. Or rather, it had felt like so long, but on the material plane it had only been weeks. He would cry if he thought he could, seeing her smile again, feeling the warmth of her hand in his, even though he knew there should not be any warmth. He could almost hear her heart pounding at the sight of him, as it had done so many times before. But he knew that must just be his imagination. If he still had an imagination, that is. He tried to say her name as she seemed to squeeze his hand. Her eyes welled up at the sight of her name on his lips once again. The warmth of his hand in hers. She thought her heart was going to beat out of her chest, but she knew that was no longer possible. She no longer had a heart, or a chest for that matter. All she had left was love, and she was so grateful to see the love reflected back at her in his steely blue eyes. A tear, or the perception of a tear, left her eye, and she let it roll down what was once her cheek. An ethereal hand reached up to gently brush it away. His touch was electric. But she could feel it, and more tears came flooding out as that thought took hold. She could feel him again, and perhaps the biggest smile of her life, and heart full of love and relief. She embraced her Samal. He saw her lean in, her lips upward towards him, and he pulled her in close with his once strong arms and embraced his Azori. They held that kiss for as long as they could, as they dimmed from existence on the material plane. Maybe true love does last forever.
Who knew James went by one of those pen names I see on the romance novels at the checkout at the grocery store?
Mr. Sex.
Oh, you better believe it.
Oh, my.
I got my husband and his dad pregnant.
Someone called Fabio. We got to cover the shoot.
And finally, we see Rin Savinci. She pours herself a tea. The settings placed for guests she know will never come. She looks to the empty space where the cupola of the gauntlet was once placed on the horizon, and gazes upon the stars that are now dotted along the edge of the forest canopy. Stepping into the night, she makes the long walk through the entrance of town and along the cliff to the Otari graveyard. There she passes many freshly replaced tombstones and plaques. A work in progress still, but nearly finished, this cemetery would soon one day be a reverent sight of beauty once again. Striding through the cool night air, the faint smell of freshly dug soil and new spring flowers. Her direction is purposeful, and it leads her to a small grave with a simple marker bearing no name. It is well tended and strewn about with gifts, fresh flowers and dried bundles, and knickknacks of all sorts. Found treasure is what he would have called it. A sentiment Rin always related to, given the many strange and often useless oddities that could be found in her own curio shop. She stood for a moment, appreciating the embarrassment Physic would have felt if he was given a simple stone placard. And how ironic it was that the citizens of Otari accepted the insistences from those who knew him best to not place such a thing, but they also ignored the point entirely by scattering these honorific, useless, and valueless treasures.
Who could place value on sentiment, anyhow? Indeed, they are invaluable.
She thinks this to herself. She takes a seat on the ground with the grave in front of her and reaches into her robe, producing the flask of fellowship, lost and found somewhere along the way and in the aftermath of Belcor's defeat. It feels inevitable that such a thing would make its way into her possession. She raises it to the resting place and says,
I'll have what you would have, my dear friend.
and she takes a sip. And then she quickly winces, a sharp and acute discomfort, before letting out a small, laughing cough.
Pickle juice. Of course.
Physic lives.
Physic lives forever.
And I didn't even cry once. I'm so impressed with myself.
You looked like you were crying the whole
All
time.
right, redo it. Redo it. We go
From the
again
top.
until Freeman cries.
Until my weeping
From the
baby.
top. Okay.
We need the blubber cut.
Episode 1. Let's go.
And for the first time, the last time, that's what we're going to call it.
Hey, shout out listeners. If you've been with us this whole time, we fucking love you.
Thanks for listening.
And we appreciate you listening.
Good job. Good job, everyone.
You know what? Good job, Byron.
Whoa. There's rare praise.
Suck it, Barn.
Okay, fine. Physic digs his way out of the grave, totally renewed.
Bronze.
Campaign 2, Physic Zombie.
The Zeds are right
Zombie.
there.
Stemming the Tide is an actual play podcast of the Adventure Path Abomination Vaults and is produced by the Uncharted North Network. Stemming the Tide uses trademarks and/or copyrights owned by Paizo Inc., used under Paizo's community use policy. We are expressly prohibited from charging you to use or access this content. Stemming the Tide is not published, endorsed, or specifically approved by Paizo. For more information about Paizo Inc. and Paizo products, visit paizo.com. Music is composed by Will Savino and artwork by Greyhood. Stemming the Tide is recorded remotely using Foundry Virtual Tabletop. If you wish to connect with us or support this project and projects to come, we can be found at unchartednorth.ca, patreon.com/unchartednorth, and on all major social media platforms. Links to all credits can be found in the episode description and our website. Thanks for tuning in.
Oh, hello there. Did you think I was forgotten? Well, guess again. You're probably wondering what's happened to me, and the all-too-dangerous dimensional incarnate enclosure. Well, thanks to me, the die found its way into the Otari Museum at Menhima's Manor. Though, rather than being on public display, it sits in a well-tempered glass case inside an iron-bound chest behind a sturdy locked door on the other side of a rather magnificent entrance to a state-of-the-art vault. The sort of place you wouldn't expect to exist in a place like Otari, but then few know it's really there. Perhaps that's for the best. And so long as we see the Menhima's line continue in its noble and reasonable fashion, it's safe to say that it remains in safe hands. As for me, well, I've skipped town. It was long overdue that I rid myself of those bullies of adventuring partners. We had some good times. But those brave fools really knew how to push one's 4 whole buttons. They were under a lot of pressure, though, so I'll let bygones be bygones. I'm off to see the world. Maybe discover my true origins. Who knows? Maybe I've got family out there somewhere. I sure will miss the stories that Augrail told, though. Maybe I'll try my hand at writing some down myself. Well, I'm off on my own adventure, filled with the bravado of Nirkaj, the bravery of Lady Gilda, and the determination of Sage Tulak.
This is Duffy Bindleford saying, Friede, Freude, Eierkuchen.